Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to those that are in attendance and to all of those that are following along online on our YouTube channel. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of North Dundas, today being June 20, 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Uhrig, that the meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Dundas be hereby called to order at 4:33 p.m. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Are there any changes to be made to the agenda? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Uhrig, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the agenda be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Are there any disclosures? Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Uhrig, that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of North Dundas held on May 9, 2024 be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Uhrig, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of North Dundas held June 6, 2024 be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And at this point on the agenda, we're going to enter into the public meeting portion of tonight's meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the zoning bylaw of the former Township of Mountain. Everyone present is urged to sign the attendance sheet. And has everyone signed the attendance sheet? Everyone? Everyone? Okay. He doesn't want anyone to know he's here. Fair enough. Okay, we'll now have the presentation regarding the proposed zoning amendment from Mr. Pohl. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. So we're considering a zoning amendment this evening submitted by Edwin Duncan for a property at 110660 County Road 3, and it's an amendment to rezone a property from rural to rural exception 31. So with regard to a zoning amendment, before council can consider it, they must have one advertised public meeting. And if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at this public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of North Dundas before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to an appeal of the decision of the Council of North Dundas to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So that's the appeal body that looks at them. So I've noted the subject property is legally described as part of Lot 13, Concession 2 in the former Township of Mountain, now the Township of North Dundas, being Part 1 on Reference Plan HR 4002. So some of the background to this property: the existing land use is residential and it's a former office. It was an office for a transport truck business. The proposed use or reuse of the building is a maximum of 6 multi-residential dwelling units. The official plan has the property within a special policy area, and I'll get into that in a moment. The zoning bylaw is currently rural, and the proposed zoning is a rural exception zone number 31. And the size of the property is just over 2.62 acres. So here's an aerial shot of the property, the surrounding land use designations from the official plan. So where it sits is a special policy area, that's the yellow stars. The agricultural resource lands are to the north and to the south, shown in the green. And the employment lands are the former transport truck business, which is to the east of the property on the screen, to the right side of the screen. So this is a shot of the actual special exemption designation in the official plan. It's the yellow area, and the red arrow highlights where the subject property is. It extends along the river, South Nation River, along County Road 3, all the way out from the settlement area. We attempted back in 2006 to get this area included in the settlement area. We tried again in the 2018 official plan and were unsuccessful. Now we're trying again to get it included, because what we're trying to get in this area is to allow for residential uses. There's about 16 to 18 houses along this strip. We've been trying to get it into a residential area, so we're still continuing on that process. So there is an official plan amendment required to somehow deal with this because it's going from a residential house to multi-res. So that's part of a process we're right now undertaking at the county level. So that special policy area, it's listed here what the uses are. Right now, it does allow for commercial uses and agricultural service uses may be permitted in addition to the typical agricultural uses. So it has a special designation if somebody wanted to set up a farm dealership or things like that on that, in that strip, they could do so, as well as a commercial use if someone has started a bed and breakfast or something along that line, they could do that also. So the purpose and effect is to rezone the subject property to allow for a maximum of 6 residential dwellings within the existing structure. The approval, the effect of the approval would be the owner would be able to apply for building permits to convert the existing building into a maximum of 6 residential dwelling units. So council is bound by the provincial policy statement. There's a new statement been issued right now for 2024, but it's not law yet, hasn't been pronounced yet at the legislature. So we're still using the 2020 policy statement. It talks about accommodating a range and supply of different housing options through intensification and redevelopment, taking into account the existing building stock. The provincial policies here is talking about encouraging redevelopment of properties. It also promotes development standards which facilitate intensification, redevelopment, and compact building form, and promotes a range of housing options. This building being converted into 6 units, it's an existing dwelling, is definitely an intensification and a reuse of a building, which is what the province wants. However, it does have some stipulations being in an agricultural area that works against it. So also under the policies council has to consider is the county official plan. It supports the goal of intensification. It encourages the range of densities. It supports residential development in proximity to community amenities, which are just down the road. Owners will have to demonstrate the lot size is adequate to accommodate multi-residential and associated services. So through this process, they are undertaking these studies and reviews to see what the septic requirements are to meet those, whether or not you have to add lines or additional tanks or a separate system for the additional units. Also, they're doing well tests on the well to make sure the well has the capacity for the units. That's part of the background work that's taking place as we speak. So the new exception zone, this is what it'll look like. It'll be a special exemption 31. It'll allow for a permitted additional uses up to a maximum of 6 dwelling units, and will allow for accessory structures and uses. So here's a photo of the property itself, the building. Nothing's going to change to the exterior of the building. All the interior, all the renovations are in the interior. The office space is to the left there. The 2-story part is the former office space. That would be converted into residential units as well as the existing dwelling. And the basement of the existing dwelling can also be converted into a separate unit. You also have garage space with that. On the existing site, there is sufficient parking already for all these additional units. They had a large parking area for their former employees, so nothing actually will change on the exterior whatsoever. So you're just looking at what's going to change inside. So the recommendation is that the proposed zoning amendment constitutes good planning. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement to allow for intensification and redevelopment, as well as the official plan amendment. So we're looking at amendment number 25 to modify it to allow for residential use on this property or multi-res. So we're recommending the council approve the rezoning being the first and second reading at this time pending the official plan amendment. So one of it's a procedural thing, is you need the official plan amendment in place before we can do the final reading. But to give it first and second reading to allow it to start, or the concept the council is agreeable with this, and it goes through the first motions. Secondly, the council considers any comments from the public or public bodies and adjacent neighbors during the public meeting before rendering a decision on the proposed amendment. So part of the process is we circulate this to public bodies and ministries beforehand. We did receive a comment today from South Nation Conservation Authority at around 3 o'clock, so it's not on the slide deck. They stated that the house is outside their regulated area, so there's no requirements with regard to the house itself or the redevelopment of the house. And they indicated modifications to the septic system will require a permit from South Nation They are a regulatory body for septic systems, so they will require a permit if there's any modifications. And we did receive from the public one phone inquiry. He had no objection to the proposed intensification. And with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. So now, at this point, we'll open the meeting up to questions and comments from the public. And members of the public are asked to state their name and address for the clerk to record before providing any comments on the proposed amendment. Questions, comments? Seeing none, the applicant, does the applicant wish to make a comment? Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Bergeron, thank you.
Okay, so Edwin, I'm definitely for this, making more units at your place. It just makes sense. And this whole designation of that whole strip has been a pain in my shoe, thorn in my shoe, for many, many years. Because as you're well aware, on the west side of South Mountain, where the land is twice as deep, they have a different designation. They can sever to their heart's delight. And yet on the east side, where the fields are so narrow, they have a stuck where we can't sever. And so I'm thinking, OMAFRA, there's no way that they have experienced farmers on their board, because it's true. They must have desk junkies there, because any experienced farmer would look at the map and say, I can't even turn my piece of equipment around in there. So why is it designated agricultural? So hopefully at some point, someone over there will have common sense and they'll change it.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments from members of council? I somewhat echo the Deputy Mayor, and I think of the challenge the last term of council we had with the OPA and the province, and that section of land where the river swings through the property and meanders through, and the Deputy Mayor at the time would talk about how you couldn't turn a hay wagon in there, but it's agricultural land and you can't do anything with it, really. So I do understand the Deputy Mayor's thoughts on that. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all those attended, thank Mr. Pohl, and we'll move on to the next item of our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Pohl. So we have two delegations with us tonight, one in person, and just for everyone's benefit, after the first delegation, we're going to take a few minutes to set up the switch over from in-person to Zoom, because the second delegation is presenting by Zoom, so we're going to have to take a little bit of a break, not leave the room, it'll just be a few minutes. And so at this point, I'm going to ask for the Police Services Board update from Sergeant James Blanchette. Mr. Sergeant Blanchette, please come ahead. And make sure your mic is on, please.
Yeah, I think we're good. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, and of course staff. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm going to open this up a little. This is hot. The police report I've provided in advance, and of course if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. There are no real significant changes, but there are a few, and we'll be open to any questions you have. Before we go through that, though, I just wanted to address a couple of concerns that we have had rather specific to North Dundas. We've had a lot of traffic complaints, particularly on St. Lawrence and Main. And for about a month now, we've been assigning officers specifically, not just to patrol as they normally would, but specifically dedicated resources to those areas. And I can tell you we've had a lot of enforcement in the area, and having said that, we will continue with that because people aren't getting it. The enforcement is working, but it hasn't been the deterrent. The message hasn't got out there as we would like, so we will continue with that dedicated enforcement in those areas. And I can tell you also we've had on that same section quite a number of complaints with people running through the lights of school buses who are stopped. We have charged a few individuals, but sadly that is also continuing. So our plan will be in the new school year to really do a heavy concentration of media information. So hopefully people are aware. I'd like to think they should be aware already that they shouldn't do that. But and then we'll have I shouldn't say we will have. We currently also do have zero tolerance. There's no discretion. Officers are not permitted discretion on that charge. We take this very seriously. And we're hearing these things, and I've had some of this information passed on from staff here as well. So I want to assure you we take these things seriously, and we are addressing them. And we do, in fact, appreciate the calls, because we obviously can't be everywhere. So when we get told of a specific problem or problem area, it's nice we can dedicate resources specifically to that. So I would encourage each and every one of you to continue those calls, either to Alicia or I, and we will take the appropriate action.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Lennox, who's, I'm sure, would like to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you. There's your few words. But I want to look at, I was caught by surprise where I was thinking mischief would be the leading charge for nonviolent crime, but it's actually fraud. Would you be able to give a high-level overview of what you're seeing on the streets?
Certainly. So mischief, number one, we'll start there, goes up and down depending on the, hate to say it, but the group of youth that we have at any particular time. You'll see, that rotates around. You might have a bad little group in Chesterville this year, and then we'd be Winchester next year, and whatever, that's typical, moves around. But it's been fairly constant. The frauds, I can tell you, that's a North American-wide trend. They are on the increase. We in SD&G have dedicated a lot of time and resources, myself included, presentations to seniors groups, service clubs. So part of the change in statistics would be we're encouraging people to report. In the past, people thought, well, I didn't actually get defrauded, so I'm not going to call, or they're embarrassed, or it's a small amount. We're encouraging people to call. So it's hard to say specifically whether it's that information that we're putting out there, encouraging the call, whether we have more reporting of the problem or we have more problem. But safe to say it's a combination of the two. North American-wide frauds have grown steadily, and they're becoming more and more proficient in what they do. Some of them I look at, and you have to give them credit. They're brilliant. And sadly, they take advantage of people who are often elderly or desperate, and what they do is they prey on people's strong emotions and feelings. And so it's pretty sad. We're doing everything we can. There's been some pretty high-profile international arrests that have been done. The OPP, RCMP, and some larger municipal partners are all working together, and there's a really good sharing of information, working with Interpol, and we've made arrests internationally, as I said. So I'm optimistic that we can curb this, and particularly these educational sessions, that as we can make people more and more aware of how to protect themselves, that we'll see a change in that.
No, perfect. And thank you and to your constables for all your efforts dealing with violent and nonviolent crime. And again, for what your traffic units are doing on the streets in here and Chesterville and South Mountain as well, in those problematic areas highlighted. I just want to express my praise and thanks for everything that you and your uniformed officers are doing. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further, Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Urick.
Okay, just to clarify, the fraud, are we talking about internet fraud, phone fraud? Is that what you're referring to when you're talking fraud?
They're all captured on the stats that I provided as one. Probably internet fraud is, I shouldn't say probably, definitely
The lead.
is the greatest in terms of victimization. In one particular fraud I dealt with, we're getting a big increase on romance frauds, romance scams. We have, I personally dealt with one over $400,000, the victim. So, yeah, they're really, really on the increase as people are more isolated and they're alone, and they're looking for company. So unfortunately, that's probably the largest, fastest growing one in this area right now.
Okay, my next question is, regarding cars passing school buses, my question is, if let's say I was behind a car that, and I'm the second car behind the bus, and the car in front of me passes the bus, and I have a dash cam. If I bring that to the OPP, can anything be done? Or if someone sees it with their cell phone, for instance, can anything be done?
Yes, certainly. So many, in fact, most all of the offenses under the Highway Traffic Act require the driver to be identified. This particular charge, we don't need to even identify the driver. If you can get us the license plate, whether it's you remember it and write it down, or you have it on some sort of camera, that's perfect. We will lay the charge against the owner of the vehicle. It's
So
one of
you're
those very rare offenses.
So you're saying even if we don't have a picture, but we witness it, and I should write down the license plate number, you accept that? Is that what you're
I
saying?
need reasonable grounds, and I would have reasonable grounds based on your observations. You tell me it was the gray car that you have in the picture. That's I identify the owner by doing an MTO check. I will charge the driver of the vehicle. It doesn't really. I mean, ideally, we'd like to identify the driver, but we will lay the charge regardless. And that's, like, as I said earlier, that's a mandatory charge. We don't have any discretion. We don't use any discretion. They will be charged based on your observations.
Thank you. I think that's a good thing for the public to know because it is a serious issue. And if the public know that if they spot it on their dash cam or if they have it on their phone, that the charges will be laid because then there will be more charges laid.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
in the past, our messaging around bus safety in the fall, we typically do it. It's been gentle reminders. I think we have to step that up a little bit because we're seeing an increase, and it'll be, okay, gentle reminder, but let's look at what the enforcement action will be, how much is the charge, and it's time to start stepping up, as we do with impaired driving, encouraging the public to report it. And so, yes,
Thank you.
hopefully we'll see an improvement on that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, no, I'm really just piggybacking on what my fellow council members have said, but I do want to thank you and the constables for the increased enforcement around this. I mean, we've all heard about it. Some of us here have witnessed it. It is seemingly becoming I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of has taken over society when it's become such a prominent thing, but I do appreciate the efforts to combat it as much as possible, and I am looking forward to kind of that more I don't know if heavy-handed reminders would be the apt term, but later in the year. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and just a little more on that. You know, our priority always is education before enforcement, but in this case, you know, the education's been done for years. It's time to step up the enforcement, and I can assure you we will be.
Do you want to talk about Councillor Hannibal? Thanks, Councillor Urick.
Just a comment, really. I'm on the board at the Beechcroft here, and about 6-8 months ago, we had a tenant taken for a lot. We've installed cameras at every entrance, so we're vigilant. We're looking.
Yeah, that's fantastic because they need help with it. Many people just aren't as proficient as the bad guys are, so everything we can do to protect members of our society is obviously a great thing, so cameras are phenomenal.
Thank you, and Councillor Urick has more.
None of us asked, but I'm just curious, what is the charge? If I'm stopped and charged, what is the fine
For the school bus?
for going past?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't do the enforcement, so I really don't remember, but I think it's in the neighborhood of $400 or $500.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
That's not a small fine by any means. So.
No, it's not. It's rather large, and there's points with it as well. And yeah, I apologize not having the exact answer for you.
So, yeah, and I guess I'll piggyback to everyone else's comments, but to the fraud, I had the opportunity to attend at the Winchester branch of the SDG Library. There was a tea with seniors, and I sat in on that and enjoyed the tea and cupcakes. But it was quite a presentation, and when you mentioned $400,000, and you're one of your fellow officers that it was a while ago, and I just forget the name. I think he might have talked about $600 million in the past year in Canada in fraud. And it's astounding how many people get caught by that. And so it's a presentation like this with people pay attention on YouTube and see that and be mindful of maybe their parents or their aunts or uncles and pass the message along to be careful and just don't offer out information and don't hand out credit card or social insurance numbers, and just be, as has been said, vigilant. And
Yeah, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, so it's the combination of this group of police forces in the country. They have a website, and they highlight monthly what the latest, greatest trends are, and you can get all the information that you would need to not just protect yourself, but to be more aware of the types of tactics that they apply. So, yeah, so if I would encourage anybody to go there if they have any further desire for information or questions that they want answered.
And I just want to mention Councillor Lennox has been a champion of speeding, or not a champion of speeding, champion of enforcing the speed limit, and although maybe enforcing the speed limit, and a champion of the stop arm on school buses and how attention needs to be paid. And we had a meeting with traffic and Staff Sergeant Birch and another officer, and the commitment as we see it taking place now for enforcement and being mindful. And I do believe Councillor Lennox was talking about maybe twice during a school season to have a zero tolerance blitz, and we're quite supportive of that. We need to work hand in hand to make sure that. And I think $400 or $500 is too little for anyone to blow by a school bus that stop arm is out. That's a decision that's made. That's not just inadvertent going 5K over the speed limit. That's a decision that you decided to risk a child's life, and it's mind-boggling. But anyway, thank you very much for your presentation. All information is good information, and I hope the message gets out there.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. Take care.
Thank you, Jim. So as I promised, we're going to take a quick little break so Natalie can get everything ready for the next delegation. How many minutes? Okay, so welcome back. And our next delegation is Tracy Chalifou he's a specialist in municipal and utility access relations for Explore Inc. Good evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can, thank you.
All right. Thank you for the invite and the opportunity to explain this project. I'll just get right into it. So my name is Tracy Chalifou, as explained with Municipal Relations for Explore. My role is to interact with the municipalities, townships, towns, cities, counties within rural Ontario in the lots that we were awarded to explain the ASIP project. Part of the role as well is to find out what is the process for working within your community. So what type of permits, any kind of municipal access agreements and things like that. So that's typically what I've been doing for Explore now for a couple of years. And every once in a while we get this opportunity to explain to Mayor and Council what it is that we do and what ASIP is. And so in this particular case, we put together a slideshow. It's kind of brief, but it does the job in terms of what we're going to be doing. And so when there was a big problem with internet in general during COVID, COVID caused everybody to work from home. It put a big strain on the existing network that was in place. Government found out that there was not enough capacity to have everybody, working from home and looking to be online and to be able to work. And so it exposed the network and all its weaknesses. Decision was made to spend $4 billion to bring high-speed internet to rural Ontario. Part of the challenge is that there's a lot of people who typically wouldn't get service from regular ISPs like ourselves because there's not enough concentration of population in rural areas. So the government put together a subsidized program to allow the 8 incumbents on this project to bring fiber down a road that might have only 3 homes. So typically you can't make a business case to do that. So ASIP provides that funding. So part of that program is to connect every community meaning all of these rural parts of Ontario, to help the project get built on time and on budget, and to help, facilitate the interaction between ISPs, LDCs, which are local power companies, and municipalities. They drafted legislation to help explain what's required to get this project built on time and on budget, because it's a very short time frame that we have to work within, and we're all working together to try and achieve that. So the legislation was put in place to do that. This slide basically talks about something that I think we're all familiar with, how high-speed internet will improve our lives, connecting to each other, being able to work from home, healthcare, as most of you know, healthcare can be done online. All your appointments can be booked online. With previous networks being copper, there just wasn't enough capacity to allow for this to happen. And now medical records, imaging can all be shared online in a matter of seconds. Whereas if it was an old copper network, it would be done at night to be able to allow for capacity to send large data files. Online shopping, as we all know, I'm sure we're all used to using things like Amazon, but again, high-speed fiber-based internet provides for seamless online shopping. And then online education, which is a big one, is probably the biggest one. It allows for children to work from home, do their school from home, send and receive homework and things like that. These are just the ways that I'm sure that we all know, but worth remembering that that's what this project is setting out to achieve. apologies if you hear my dog barking. I'm working from home and he's getting excited to get outside. So this slide talks about everything that Explore will provide. Once we're connecting homes, we've sold services in the community. We'll provide accelerated high-speed internet in the rural community. This will achieve a much improved broadband experience where if you're on less than 5010, which is basic high speed, your upload and download speeds for connectivity are all pretty slow. So a lot of us do streaming to watch TV now. This will be seamless. Everything is instant on fiber. There is no delay. There's no waiting for things to happen. It happens quickly. Customers can choose from rural living to the fullest. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Our customer support network is Canadian-based. It's based out of New Brunswick, and so we have bilingual agents that can handle any type of phone calls in English or French. And again, we're looking to connect every community. This next slide talks about our commitment to customer service and putting customers first. I'm not going to get into that. Happy to share this presentation, anybody that wants to read that, but I'd like to leave time for questions at the end. But it basically just talks about our commitment to customers and how that has improved over the years and things like that. This map is probably hard for you to see, but again, I can share this in a format where you can make it larger. For this presentation, I can't do that, but it does outline all of the different homes that we're looking to connect. And as you can see by all the colored dots, the different colors just mean the various OLTs. That's a service area. Sorry. And yeah, we're connecting hundreds of homes within North Dundas, and this map outlines the running lines and the communities we're looking to get into. And so as part of the project, we're looking to have this up and running by December 2025. And as a result of that tight time frame, we've started to submit permits probably 2 months ago, and we're trying to submit permits for roughly 63,000 fiber drops to homes. And once the permits are submitted, then we get them back, and then construction happens. In your community, construction is already happening, so that's a really good thing. And that's the explanation of this project in a nutshell. But happy to take any questions you might have, and yeah, feel free to ask away.
Thank you, sir. We do have some questions. Councillor Lennox.
Good afternoon. Thank you for doing this for our community and especially those living in the country. I'm just wondering, the west side of the township is virtually blank. Is there funding and a plan to do South Mountain, Hallville, and all the little roads in between?
That is a very good question. So South Mountain, and let me just see if I can share something that might be helpful. Can you see this?
No, sir.
No, we're not able to see it.
Okay. Why? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. Share again. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
It's basic. Okay, so this is basically a map that we started out with, and this was 2 years ago when we got our map of the list of homes that we're required to connect. Now, I'm going to add a layer to this map that provides the green shaded areas. Everything in green is a lot. So when we zoom out, we see that rural Ontario is divided into lots. The black outlines are municipalities, but we got a very large chunk of this project because of the fact that we're a rural internet provider. One thing that we did find, though, that there are these little holes within every one of the lots that we were given. And according to the province's estimation, these are areas that are serviced already. What I can tell you is they're not always accurate. Sometimes it just shows up on their network or their system of seeing where networks exist as being serviced. But we're finding out that that's not always the case. And so is this the South Mountain that you were talking about in here?
That's correct. Deputy Mayor, do you have fiber out your way?
I was just approached last week by one of your salespeople, walking from house to house. I live in South Mountain, and so
Okay.
I asked him where. I asked him where the service was coming from, and he said it was from the Rogers Tower that was just put up at our fairgrounds. So South Mountain will have service from a tower.
Okay, so the 5G radio wave tower stuff, not actual fiber.
This fellow told me it was from the Rogers Tower that was just erected in South Mountain.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering because we have to be inclusive of all of North Dundas. Obviously, my question's just pretty much pointing out on the one map, the west side of the township from 31 over is virtually blank, minus going up Highway 31. So, if there's funding in the future, that's awesome.
Okay, now are you talking about this area in here?
Yeah, so that's Hallville. So you see, Highway 43. So you have a line running up 43 there on the other map.
Yep.
But once you pass Crowder Road, roughly, it's just the one line up 43. But this is pretty technical in the weeds we're getting. I was just wondering for future, is there government funding and project plans with ExploreNet or Explore to bring in more capabilities and options to compete with the other retailers such as Rogers, Bell, etc. in South Mountain, and Hallville?
Okay, and so it's a solid question. It comes up. The challenge that we have is to first of all service the homes that we were given. So we build that network out. Now, there is a program out there that we have in-house called Right of First Offer. It's just another way of us finding money internally to build out existing networks, which this is going to be once it's up and running, to collect homes that we're now aware of that do not have basic high-speed internet. And so initially we're going off the government's data and information they've provided us. And then we go forward and we build all this network. So all these areas in here where you see the red running lines, it's pretty accurate. It's not going to be, exact, but the previous map that I showed is very accurate and very current. But what I can tell you is that program, that right of ROFO, they call it, we'll pick up a bunch of homes after the fact where we're spending our own money to go and get those. What makes that doable is that this network will be up and running. It's been subsidized by the province, and so it'll make it easier for us to extend these running lines. Like, let's say we've got this is backbone infrastructure along 43, and then I don't know what that is. That's is that number 1? Whatever that is, but through here, we'll have network there, which should allow us to go down to Mountain and South Mountain. So if we can determine that there's underserviced areas there, there are no other options, just like wireless options, then we may just run a line down that road and connect everybody. So that's always an option. But finding out from the municipality where these areas are would be helpful. So if we can maybe collect that information from you in some format where there's no 5010 service wired, then we'd be happy to know that. And if it makes sense to be able to run a wire from 43 or somewhere close, then we would probably do it.
No, excellent. Thank you for your response. And yeah, this definitely sounds like more research and boots on the ground type scenario. So Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Further questions? Councillor Urick?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate that. And I don't think anybody would argue that, there's certainly gaps and were gaps and in some cases continue to be gaps in rural internet connectivity. I think my only concern thought, and I definitely have heard about it from residents, I think most of us sitting here tonight have heard it. I'm curious why, with the infrastructure capabilities being what they are today, why, running further poles into the ground was the ideal solution from Explorer's part in terms of running these wires.
Yeah, good question. So, as you know, Ontario is a very diverse province with a very diverse landscape. We deal with many types of soil issues, whether it's it's wet, or there's canals, or there's rock, which is our number one challenge right now. Our first method of design and build is to put this on pre-existing poles. As a result, we've worked to get agreements in place with Hydro One, with Bell, with let's see who's in your community for an LDC. Probably somebody like Rideau St. Lawrence might be there. Not sure if Eastern Ontario Power has network up there, but all the power companies that we're aware of, we have agreements with, or the agreements are currently being worked out. So some of the smaller ones, like Lansdowne Tel, we're currently working on an agreement that allow us to use that. So the challenge we run into when we use other people's poles is they're already being used by somebody else. So they're at capacity for allowing companies like ourselves to get on there. So there might be a portion of the poles that we can get on, but then at a certain point, the poles past that point are over capacity. There's also poles that are not tall enough, that are too old, that require replacement. And just the engineering on replacing poles alone takes months. And so then when we do an assessment of the existing pole infrastructure, we're able to know if we can use them. When we can't, then we look for options. One option is to plow, to go underground. Another option is trenching. And so some municipalities allow for these things, some don't. So then another option is new poles. And so new poles seem to be the last option that we'll go to, but I can tell you that 80% of this project is on pre-existing poles. And so having seen the design for this area, it's going to be about 70% on Hydro One and Bell, and then 30% either underground or new poles. So that's the construction methodology.
Perfect. Thank you for your response.
Welcome.
Further? So whenever you're talking about the poles, I was just reminded of something. I'm looking at our CAO. Are you involved? How far east do you travel? I mean, how far east are you reaching? Are you reaching east to the Quebec border?
I think I can show you that on this map. Sorry, I just had to get up and let my dogs outside before they drove us all crazy with their barking. Okay, so anything in green is as far east as we're going to go. So into South Stormont and North Stormont a ways, but nothing past that. So this is the edge of the project for us.
And the conversation about the poles and the 80% on existing and 70 in our area. There's a project near Maxville, but I guess you're not touching in that area where the poles are there's a widening of a road, and there's poles of sizes. The existing poles are shorter than the new poles, and it's all going to become new poles, I guess, because of the tensioning and the guy wires that are needed. It's going to be quite a challenge.
Right.
And, but anyway, it's not. I don't think that's going to affect you in our area, being around Maxville. But I do want to touch base, and Councillor Urick started that conversation about the poles and property owners and the interaction. We do appreciate you presenting tonight. There's been concerns expressed by members of our community. Our staff, I have worked diligently to get answers up, and I do believe solutions have been reached. But it's that interaction of, and I go to one of your slides where you talked about rural living. Customers can choose to experience rural living to the fullest. We have to understand what experience people in rural areas truly want. Some want the aesthetic of their property and of their area and their views, and they don't want it interfered with, and that's understandable. They move to an area that's quiet and serene and picturesque, if you would. So how, that interaction is important to us because we live it every day and we're in a rural area. And the customers or people living on a road that's going to be affected by new poles, which would be more poles, which in turn could become a road full of poles, which isn't always a bad thing, depends. I just joke, our director is Mr. Pole. It's important to us that the residents of North Dundas, their voices are heard. And I do believe that's the process that's been taking place recently, so I appreciate that. But I do want to express...
Yeah. So we're talking about Link Road. There was a challenge there, and I'm sure Mr. Link let his views be known to mayor and council, as I was told. So I don't envy those conversations, but I've had many like it. It's always going to be a challenge when you're dealing with public infrastructure. And so provincial land bodies like Ontario Land, or in Alberta, where I'm from, we have the Surface Rights Board. It pretty much does the same thing. And anytime a project like this goes to a hearing, the question will always be asked, is it within the public good for this project? And the answer is always going to come back as yes. Because people need high-speed internet, and all we need is some kind of a catastrophe to outline just how important it is, and that happened during COVID. And so one person on a road might not want a pole, but in this particular instance, it worked out that it was just a dead-end road, and it wasn't a through road that connected other customers on the other side. And we'd have come up with a solution for that one as well. But most people will see that it benefits the greater good, everybody, and provincial bodies like Infrastructure Ontario or Ontario Land will always, side on the greater overall public good of a project. And so, in the instance of Mr. Link and Link Road, we were able to de-scope that portion of the project. They made it known that they wouldn't be customers. We approached the province, let them know of the situation, and asked them if they would allow us to de-scope, simply because new poles weren't going to work there. And to go underground for the 3 homes would have been quite expensive. And going underground typically means you need to collect like dozens of customers to justify the cost of burying. Going on pre-existing poles is first option, but they weren't available in that area. So new poles were the only other option. So we did our best, and in this particular case, it worked out because we were able to de-scope.
Yes, and we appreciate that. And Mr. Link's with us tonight, and I'm happy that it was, as you say, de-scoped. And when they think of the benefit to a community, benefit to the public, when the poles would be just a benefit to those that feel it's not absolutely necessary that there's poles there, I think it worked out well, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Any further questions, comments from members? Well, sir, I understand you're on a deadline, a tight timeline, and you got to get the dog back in the house. So if there's nothing further, thank you very much for your presentation. It's appreciated.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
We're going to move into action requests. And Chief Raystrick. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Urick, that council adopt policy number 107-2024, facial hair policy as presented this 20th day of June 2024. Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here to ask you to pass a policy for facial hair guideline for the fire service. The purpose of the policy is to establish a guideline to protect the members of the North Dundas Fire Service during training and while performing their duties at emergencies. The policy does apply to all members of the fire service. Many health and safety agencies have overwhelmingly agreed that facial hair, especially beards, sideburns, mustaches, when they come in contact with the SCBA, the face piece, they prevent a good seal and they can permit excessive contaminants. So at this time, I would like to ask for any questions or.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Lennox, and then Councillor Urick.
Good afternoon, Chief. It's been a while.
It has.
I'll let you shave off whichever question you want here. But
It's fun.
the policy is suggestive in nature, and for those already hired and within employment, how are you going to encourage them to buy into this policy?
So again, to reiterate, this policy, the intention is to protect the members of the fire service. As we all know, COVID absolutely brought to light the fitment and the usage of face masks. And this policy will help address that with firefighters as we attend more medical calls and possibly communicable diseases. We'll be able to wear a better fitting mask. And when it comes specifically to our SCBAs, excuse me, this also was emphasized in 2022. We had the mobile live fire training unit brought down from the fire marshal's office in the fire college. We had some individuals show up on the first night, had a few days of growth, and the instructors from the fire college told those individuals to head over to the local fire station, and they were in there dry shaving so that they could, and anyone who's ever had to dry shave knows how horrible of an experience that can be. So I think they learned their lesson rather quickly. In addition to that, yesterday just came down through, I was on a town hall meeting with the fire marshal, and the Ontario government has instituted or offered a $30 million grant over 3 years to fire services to upgrade PPE and to upgrade health and safety. And the first year, the first $10 million is going to be on cancer awareness and prevention. So one of the areas that John Pegg, the fire marshal, actually touched on was the possibility of having individual face pieces for SCBAs and fitted so that everybody is safe and these contaminants are not entering the face mask. So like I say, this is one thing that I think will help address health and safety going forward for our members.
No, excellent response, and good to know about the grants coming up regarding PPE and cancer. It's with facial hair and et cetera not getting tight seal, you could potentially bring those contaminants into your mask, inhale those after multiple years of exposure, or just one instance, develop cancer, or even bring it home to your kids. Once you take off your PPE, get into your car, drive home, who knows where those particulates end up. But thank you, and I hope for all our members on the fire service will support this policy.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I think what surprised me most was, reading through this was that, SCBAs aren't a new thing. So what was kind of the policy previous to kind of bringing something forward to this? Was it sort of suggested now versus being enacted here?
Absolutely. That was the case. It was suggested. It was known. We all knew as firefighters that we should be clean shaven at all times. In general, it was accepted that, if you weren't clean shaven, you probably weren't going to put an SCBA on. Sometimes you had to. hopefully this will encourage people to be clean shaven. We will be seeing, I would guess, we'll be seeing more hazmat type situations in this. This really just hopefully encourages, and with the new certification that has been mandated, firefighters know when they go through that you cannot pass your firefighter 1 or firefighter 2 without being clean shaven and a proper fitting SCBA. So the education factor is absolutely there, a little bit stronger now.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
I just have one short comment. I'm thinking as an insurance provider, if I was an insurance provider, I would be requiring clean shaven because it just makes common sense. Why would I pay out to someone who was a firefighter who's making like a claim for cancer disability if the time he was a fireman he was bearded and allowed the contaminants to come in? So it just makes sense to me. Thank you.
So I had many years of being involved in the fire service, fighting fires, and I think back to when I got on in '95, which doesn't seem that long ago to some of us, but when I got on in '95, it was putting SCBAs on wasn't an easy thing. It was a challenge. They didn't fit right. They were bulky, cumbersome, and the generational learning that took place, because whenever you got on back in the 90s, you were being trained by people that probably got on in the 70s, and they lived that life where it was not necessary. But we got to be mindful that things have changed. The chemicals in a building have changed. I look at one of our members in the audience, how quickly a fire spreads in a house and how much damage is caused when you think it's really not much, but it's all the chemicals in the wood, the structural integrity of the joists, and how everything is glue and chemicals and a little bit of wood. But a house that was built 150 years ago, it was, I don't want to say it was safe, but it was akin to, closer to being around a campfire than in a toxic fire. And so as times change and we get smarter and we need to move ahead on that, but the fit testing, and a few of us have experienced the fit testing that goes on. You need to have a proper seal, or else it's not working properly for you, and you're losing air. Your bottle's being depleted quicker than necessary. But I'm not looking forward to it. I expect this is evolution, and we'll be going down the road where you'll be able to tell a firefighter in North Dundas because they're clean shaven.
I hope so.
If there's nothing further, all those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk. Moved by Councillor Urick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, the council adopt policy number 105-2024, privacy policy breach, as presented this 20th day of June 2024. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The policy in front of you basically confirms the municipality's dedication to protect personal information that we have. It provides a very structured approach for us on how to identify if there's been a breach and what actions we then take. And following on this policy as well, we are working on formalizing a personal information bank, which is indicated on the bottom of the report here, all the things that are there. And once completed, we're just putting the finishing touches on now. That will go up on our website so individuals can see why we have their information, what we have, and who has access to it.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Lennox.
As mentioned earlier with Sergeant Blanchette, frauds going up, privacy breaches. With a privacy breach regarding ransomware, someone walks in the building, sticks something nasty into a USB port, walks away. 10 hours later, the entire network's locked, and that information's sold. Is this policy going to cover electronic theft as well?
For the situation that you just described?
Or in general?
I'm not entirely sure how to answer that one, to be honest with you, because our IT, we have firewalls in place with our IT department. So what this does is if we get notified that there is a breach, this is how we deal with it.
Okay.
But we don't hear at this level.
No, that actually clarifies it. So it'd be county level IT top-down investigation.
Yes, for
Okay.
something like
No,
that, yes.
that's perfect. That's what I was looking for, more on the technological
Yep.
side of things. No, perfect. Thank you.
Further questions, Deputy Mayor?
I know I'm getting up in age a little bit, but when it comes to technical stuff, I'm a bit confused. And it says that the public has a right for to have some information. Exactly what information does the public have the right to know about an employee working here?
This isn't about employees.
Okay.
So, for example, water and sewer.
Yeah.
We have your name, your address, when we're doing water meters, that sort of thing. They need to know that there is specific information we gather during our day-to-day activities that we have to do, what we keep, who keeps it, and why we use it. That's all the personal information bank is.
Thank you.
Nothing further? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Poole. Moved by Councillor Annabelle, seconded by Councillor Lennox, that bylaw number 2024-46 being a bylaw to amend the former Township of Mountain zoning bylaw 79-6 as amended for the property legally described as part of Lot 13, Concession 2, former Township of Mountain, municipally known as 11060 County Road number 3, PIN number 66110800083 be read a first and second time in open council this 20th day of June 2024. Mr. Poole.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. So this is a follow-up on the public meeting earlier this afternoon with respect to the bylaw. So this is a first and second reading only, awaiting the official plan amendment through the counties, which we're hoping to get through hopefully in July and have public meeting in August and passage with appeal period. So that's the goal.
Questions, comments? Seeing Councillor Lennox? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And in the transportation, Mr. Cheney. Moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annabelle, that bylaw number 2024-47 being a bylaw to designate Center Street, Queen Street, west side of Ottawa Street, County Road 3 to Center Street, Dufferin Street East and North Street in the village of Winchester as no heavy truck routes be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 20th day of June 2024. Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. Good evening, members of council. As set out in the key information report submitted to council on May 9th of this year, truck traffic leaving Lactalis using the wrong entrance and exit onto Center Street had caused damage to street signs and grassed landscaped areas in nearby vicinity. Therefore, it is proposed that a no heavy truck signs be erected on Center Street, Queen Street, west side of Ottawa Street to Center Street, Dufferin Street East, and North Street to mitigate the risk of further damage to the township property and residents' property. Heavy truck is defined as a commercial motor vehicle or motor vehicle combination having a registered gross vehicle weight or actual gross weight of 4,500 kgs or more, or a manufacturer's gross weight of 4,500 kgs or more.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Urick.
Like I said last month when you brought this forward the first time, the fact that anybody even thought it conceivable that a heavy truck of that size was going to make it down either of those streets is shocking to me. So this simply makes sense, and I'm glad to see it.
And in the action request in the background, I believe it's talked about signage on a county road. So there's gonna be more signage to alert. I believe it's to alert drivers not to even bother coming into the middle of town to figure out how to get to it, and it's needed. It is surprising, Councillor Urick, that they come in and they see the narrow streets and the tight curves, the corners, and they give it a go. And they're over top of signs, over top of driveways, over top of retaining walls, and even pulling into places where there's no access to the property. It's just it's disturbing, I'm sure, to many that live in that area. So, saying all that, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Ms. Meerberg. Moved by Councillor Annabelle, second by Councillor Lennox, that council approve the award of RFP number RC 2024-03 for consulting services related to the provision of a recreation strategic plan to Sierra Planning and Management for the stipulated price of $65,610 plus HST. Ms. Meerberg.
Good evening, Council. A request for a proposal for the provision of a consulting services agreement for the development of a recreation strategic master plan was advertised. And based on a thorough review of the of the bids received, it's concluded that the bid from Sierra Planning and Management is the lowest one received, and they are very qualified for the project and meet all of the requirements. Sierra Design has completed Parks and Rec strategic plans for well over 30 municipalities across Ontario, including South Stormont and North Grenville. So they are very familiar with our area. And as you have read in my report, they have completed numerous strategic plans that include components that relate to areas of interest for North Dundas. $45,000 was approved in the 2024 budget for a recreation and culture strategic plan. The bid from Sierra Planning and Management is $20,610 over budget. Therefore, 4 options were provided for council consideration. So the first option is to approve the contract. This is recommended. The recommendation would be that the funding shortfall be offset through general working fund reserves and replenished as part of the 2025 recreation and culture budget. Option 2 is approve the contract and direct staff to negotiate with the consultant to delay the start of the work so that it extends over 2 fiscal years. Option 3, do not award the contract and investigate a joint recreation strategic plan with other neighboring municipalities. As this work is subject to budget approval from the 2 municipalities or more, there is a risk that it would not proceed or not proceed in the timely fashion that we would like. Option 4 is do not approve the award.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Uhrig, and then Councillor Lennox.
I guess a lot of us have comments on this. I agree with option 1 because I think that this needs to proceed as quickly as possible because we have major decisions to make within the next couple of years regarding our recreation facilities. And I feel that we really need an outside consultant to give us the big overview so that we can make a decision from that. I think it's important to have an objective person to give us a little bit of guidance. And so I think we should go ahead and maybe borrow some money and then put it back next year. But I don't agree at all with extending this over 2 years because this is urgent. To me, it's urgent.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Uhrig.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Deputy Mayor. No, it's 100%. I'm all in favor of option 1. This is something that needs to happen basically yesterday, so the sooner the better. If we get, as anticipated, the report presented by the end of the year, that's fantastic. There is, yes, certainly big conversations to take place, but I do think that, getting something of this nature in place will hopefully, beat back some of the tall tales, hearsay, or just frankly absolute lies that are kind of spreading through our community right now in terms of our infrastructure and what's taking place and what's happening. It should be of no surprise to anybody that we do have significant needs, and we need to address those significant needs, and this is the big step in that process. So no, I'm in favor of option 1.
Thank you, Councillor Uhrig. Councillor Lennox.
The common theme for the last, 6 council meetings was, we want this plan, we want this plan. So I agree with Councillor Uhrig's statement that Deputy Mayor took the words right out of my mouth as well. Option 1.
Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Lennox. Councillor Annabelle.
I would like to see option number 1. It's if there was any other department within the township that was spending potentially that much money, we'd have a study there too. So it's a great idea.
Thank you.
So, all those in favor? Opposed? See none? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annabelle, that council approve ice allocation policy number 63-2016 as amended this 20th day of June 2024. Ms. Meerberg.
So at the May meeting of council, staff presented some proposed amendments to the existing ice allocation policy, which are summarized in my report. Subsequently, a meeting was hosted with our major local ice user groups. This included representatives from the Winchester Skating Club, the North Dundas Minor Hockey Association, the Winchester Hawks, and the North Dundas Rockets. During the meeting, we reviewed the proposed changes to the ice allocation policy, as well as gauged interest in having our annual meetings brought back. With this valuable input, the proposed ice allocation policy has been revised. The recommended changes include deferral of the change of the start time for prime time ice. So it was recommended last meeting that we start at 5 p.m. as opposed to 6. So we are not going to proceed, or it's not recommended that we proceed with those changes right now. We'll stick with 6 o'clock for right now and bring that back for committee consultation for the upcoming ice season, the next ice season rather. The section entitled Exchange, Delay, and Cancellation of Ice Time remains generally unchanged from what was previously presented to council, but to ensure that there's greater clarity associated with high-profile events, staff have included ice shows at the request of the Winchester Skating Club. Staff have also included a note within the policy that clarifies playoffs take place during the months of February and March. The user groups expressed concern with the language associated with the start of ice season. As a result, many of our associations requiring preseason ice, they need the certainty of when ice will be put in to know if it impacts their bookings or not. So they have requested that staff investigate alternative solutions, and it was the user group's view that North Dundas absorbed the costs associated with enhanced equipment or methods in 2024, with potential to offset some of these additional costs in 2025 through the possibility of a preseason ice rate. Staff have removed the language from the policy. Proposed measures on overcoming climatic challenges are highlighted below and further detailed in an additional report, which will be reviewed next with council. The group in attendance seemed uncomfortable with the section that advised that if additional ice damage took place, that there would be repercussions for the group that made those issues. So there was discussion that a facility operator would be making the determination if additional resurfacing or repairs are required due to the excessive use of the ice. The facility operator is an experienced and well-trained staff member who is very qualified to make the decision. However, as council is aware, we do have call-in operators. Sometimes these operators have less experience. So if that is the case, the facilities manager would be contacted and advise of the situation, and he would be making the call. So the user groups were quite comfortable with that and were advised that, as always, our facility operators will advise these local groups if there are issues. So that's ongoing, and of course our operators have excellent relationships with our local user groups. The group present also agreed that it would be advantageous to resume our annual general meetings to review and discuss topics related to the past ice season and also the one coming up. So it is recommended that council approve the ice allocation policy as recommended, and we will go forward with scheduling that annual general meeting in April.
Thank you, Councillor Urick, then Councillor Lennox.
I did hear from some user groups in relation to this after it was made public, and the overwhelming sentiment was that they appreciated the changes that were made. They appreciated the fact that a meeting was called and that everybody was in the same room. I understand that in some cases maybe tensions got a little higher than necessary, but I think overall the main theme of the evening was evident versus just, acrimony and yelling at one another. In terms of G, I think my only kind of comment on that section G in terms of damage to the ice and, repeated, drills and stuff like that. I think my only comment on that is more to, use it more, and I think that is the thrust of the reason it's in there, but use it more as an advisement sort of thing versus an enforcement sort of thing. And, that no one user group wakes up to a bill the next morning kind of thing like that, right? Just as a, not as a, a heavy hand in any means. It's just more of a, understanding the fact that, repeating the same thing may in fact cause something, right? So be aware of that. More of an awareness versus a heavy-handedness. But otherwise, I'm content with what's here.
Thank you. Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was highly productive. If you can go to 77, last paragraph. All right, so the last paragraph here, this was something which I think township, including council, overlooked. These user groups often set their fees in March-April timeframe for the following year. When this point was brought up, I saw light bulbs go off on all of REC's staff, our CAO of, that's a really good point, and such a simple one to consider. And that leads into my next sentence here is, council got it right by asking REC to go back and talk to these groups. We didn't know that. We would have caused a hurdle. And what did we learn from that? We learned that all these groups agree that our ice is really cheap and they're expecting an increase at some point, but talk to us first prior to our AGM when we set our prices for the following year. So with that being said, I'm comfortable with moving ahead, approving this quickly so we can move on.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Excuse me. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And joining Ms. Meerberg is Mr. DeHaan, and we're going to roll into key information. And a presentation, key information, presentation about the Joel Steele Community Center condition review.
Thanks, and I know we want to move on, but I just quick back up, and one of the biggest takeaways for me, and I really have to commend the user groups because there's consensus around the table on this one, and I think important for all of council to hear. They, and I'm putting words in their mouth, but they essentially said, like, we are willing to pay our share, and we're willing to even pay more than our share to keep those free skates available for kids, because they see that free skate actually feeds into their programs, and so they see the benefit to the community, and they're like, I hope I don't get an email saying, no, that's not what we meant, but that's certainly the takeaway I got, was that they definitely see the value of free skates, and they understand that this facility and these two facilities cost a lot of money to operate, and they are willing to pay their fair share, and even more than their fair share to keep things free for the community. So that was actually quite touching for me to hear that. So it was a great meeting.
You'll just get an email about the Disney rights.
Yeah, that's true. So I just wanted to do a brief introduction before I turn it over to Director Meerberg. We hope that this, we're not looking for, there's a couple of questions at the end that we're looking for some guidance from council. It's presented as a key information report. But ultimately, what we hope to do, and really appreciate that the strategic plan proposal has been approved, because that's, council's keyed into the idea that that's such an important document and guiding principle that we can follow. And I guess what we want to do in this report is really highlight some of the challenges, and these are the challenges that are facing the Joel Steele Community Center and Sam Altarina in essentially the next 5 years. So we're putting them into immediate, short-term, and medium-term, I think, medium-term needs. And so Director Meerberg's just going to go over what that looks like and what it is. So council has, I hope, provides a really good snapshot of some of the significant investments that are coming up for this facility, because the strategic plan may say, may make a certain recommendation in terms of how what we do with our facility. But that's great to make that recommendation, but there's some things we need to do to keep the lights on in that facility, and we want to make sure council's aware of it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Meerberg.
Thank you. All right, so we have 2 compressors in each of our arenas. The compressor is a vital part of our refrigeration system. It pulls the vaporized ammonia from the chiller and in turn lowering the pressure in the chiller. The rebuild was included in the 2024 budget and has been completed. The roof is leaking in several areas, which are presenting challenges for maintenance and for our user groups. The cost of the full roof replacement is valued at an estimated $1.7 million. The bag insulation is located on the underside of the metal roof and is in poor condition due to age and water saturation. If the insulation and the roof are removed and only the metal roof is replaced, it does take away, of course, some of the insulation value in the arena. And a few problems that we are facing with building ice at the start of the season are the water quality, the condensation, and the insulation. So that's one of the components. So staff met with a contractor who's going to be sending us options and pricing for patching the roof, so a temporary repair, which is we're hoping to get up to an additional 5 years out of that repair work with a targeted budget of $25,000. So we do anticipate that information will be coming in soon. The roof access ladder was mandated by TSSA so that our HVAC contractors could safely get onto the roof. So that work was also included in the 2024 budget and has been completed. Another immediate need is gas detection devices. So this is an estimated cost of $13,000 and is required for our gas heaters and the exhaust for the Olympia, among a few other things. This work is the coordination is currently underway. The condenser is used to dissipate heat from the water-cooled chiller and is an essential part of our refrigeration plant. The replacement of the condenser was included in the first draft budget, but removed as our regular maintenance contractor thought that our existing unit could get us through the upcoming ice season. However, when our end of season shutdown was completed by the contractor, further investigation showed that the piece of equipment had gotten a bit worse over the last ice season. So we're now in a situation where we do need to replace it, or it could fail during ice season and the ice could potentially be lost. Depends on the time of year. If it happens right in the middle of ice season, we might be a bit safer, but if it happens at the beginning or the end, it could have an adverse effect. So staff are seeking permission from council tonight to go ahead with procuring a replacement unit at a cost of approximately $100. That we have that in stock $100,000, missing a few zeros. Sold. Yeah, so that we can get that going and hopefully replaced before ice season begins. As council is aware, in approximately 2014, we replaced the slab in the brine lines below. So we are still making payments, principal and interest payments on that slab. So those are ongoing for right now. Replacing another compressor. So that's a short-term need. So we are looking at, or rebuilding, sorry. So compressors have a lifespan of approximately 30 years, but you can rebuild them every 4 years or so. So it's anticipated that we have another compressor rebuild in the near future. Dehumidifier, we did have one replaced a couple years ago, but there are 2 in the arena. So the other one is reaching its end of life, so that will need to be budgeted for. And the fire alarm system also is identified to be nearing its end of life. However, our regular maintenance contractor has identified that the system is fine for right now, but we can anticipate that it will need to be replaced within the short term. So identified as 2025 to 2026, around there. Other short-term building improvements, so this includes things like doors, floors, ceiling tiles, bathroom paint, stair finishes. That's valued at approximately $300,000, and there's some photos in there of some of our doors and the ring boards and such, which are targeted. The reverse osmosis, that gets water impurities out so that we have better ice quality. There's been some snow buildup, and it's hard for some of our skaters to, it just presents challenges with the puck sliding and so forth. So a reverse osmosis system would remove the impurities in the water, providing better ice quality, and it also provides a longer life for our mechanical equipment. The ice resurfacer is a 2011, I believe, so it is getting older as well. As council is aware, we just purchased a new one, which should arrive very soon for the Chesterville and District Arena. The unit that we purchased was around $172,000, I believe. So we are targeting the replacement of the Winchester Olympia within the next few years, and the estimated cost is $175,000. Short-term needs are, again, the pad replacement, so just more annual payments for that. The replacement of the compressor, so the estimated cost is $120,000 for the two compressors that are in the arena. So again, you can only rebuild them so many times, and then they do need to be replaced. So estimated cost is $120,000. And in the medium term, we also have the heaters and electrical systems. So the building condition assessment identified that the heaters and electrical systems are nearing their end of service life. There are no observed defects, but major investment should be considered to ensure that failures of these critical systems are prevented. And sanitary systems. So again, the building condition assessment has identified that the sanitary systems are nearing their end of life. So we do want to budget appropriately for the sanitary systems so that we're preventative and they don't reach failure. Roof repairs. Again, the estimated replacement cost, including roof gutters, structural reinforcements, and insulation, is approximately $1.7 million. So that will need to be done when if we go forward with the roof repairs, when those repairs reach end of life. So again, we're targeting that those repairs will last us up to 5 years. Pad replacement. So again, annual principal and interest payments, which total $150,000. Over the span of 2027 to 2029. And that is it.
So quite a list, and so the total of that is we're approaching $3 million in the next 5 years for those items. And again, some of the heaters and electrical systems, even though they're functioning correctly, prudent approach is to start putting money away, so at least you've got a reserve or a bank ready to be able to address them as it comes due. Putting it in perspective, so if you spread out the $3 million evenly over 5 years, $600,000 a year, and right now in 2024, we budgeted $148,000 for the Joel Steele Community Center Santa Malta Arena facility. Our total recreation capital works in 2024 was $430,000. So not a pretty picture. again, we're not asking council to make any decisions with respect to, oh, yeah, we're good to build a new arena. That's not what we're trying to get at with this report today. I think what we're trying to really do is provide council with some information. Certainly welcome any comments we can get from council. We're here, I'm kind of helping out so that as we hear feedback and comments, we can make some notes and understand what information council really would like to have if they want to, and how they want to continue the discussion. There are two things we certainly, from a staff perspective, are looking for some direction on. One being the supplementary climate control, and we talked about that in that ICE allocation policy. We've done, and I commend staff, they've kind of jumped on that after our meeting with the user groups to get a great understanding of what we can do to set ourselves up better for success at putting in good quality ice at the beginning of the season. And I know if I don't say it, Director Mirberg's going to punch me. That's not the only piece of the puzzle. Reverse osmosis and having the best quality water that we can through those systems and on the ice makes a big impact. But supplementary HVAC controls, so actually being able to remove the humidity and lower the temperature and keep a consistent low temperature is something that will help. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it helps.
Yes,
am I doing that correctly?
correct.
Okay, good. But that costs $10,000. So if council wants to see that implemented in 2025 as a trial, we can certainly look to do that. And I think the user groups are really hopeful that that's something council will consider as a trial. And feedback again we got was they can appreciate that if that we do that, we see greater success. That's something in a preseason ice charge in the future that they would be more than happy, but they would appreciate why that is needed to be, or why that needs to be done. The other things, and again, commending staff, they're looking at options such as actually starting the plant up a little bit earlier before we really try and get the ice in, so that we can kind of bring the conditions into the right range, and then work within maybe a little bit of a greater window depending on what kind of climactic outside climactic things we're fighting against. So all this to say, we may be presented with a better window to make ice at the beginning of the year if we turn on the system earlier, rather than actually kind of compressing it down into a more narrow window. The other thing, as Director Mirberg noted, was that the unfortunate circumstance of the anticipation that we had one more year with that condenser, and maybe the greater risk that we're faced with right now. I think if the municipality doesn't invest in the condenser, obviously, if we don't invest in the condenser this year, we have a risk that it goes and we're down, and we may lose the ice, we may lose part of the ice, or we may have to. There'll be a risk there, but there's no doubt in anybody's mind on a staff level that condenser needs to, if it's not replaced this year, it needs to be replaced next year. The good news, if I may, is that it's not wasted. It's not wasted money. That's a unit that can be also relocated to Chesterville, because both plants are the same size. So there's an opportunity there if there's kind of a wholesale strategic direction to gut and reinvest this arena. That type of equipment can be used elsewhere. So it's not all lost, but there is a little bit of direction that we need there, what kind of risk council wants to take, or if it's, if we want to just bite the bullet, go for it. We'll come back and report to council how we fund it this year, and it's likely similar to what we're looking at for the strategic plan, borrow from reserves, and then pay back next year. So with that, I don't know if there's anything else we wanted to cover, but we'll turn it over to council and look forward to some feedback.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. And I see Councillor Lennox has his hand up, but I'm going to venture in first. I seldom do that. I know I reflect back on the struggles with the early preseason ice for last season, and to your comment, Mr. Hahn, about firing up the plant a little bit early to get ready for those challenges if they are. But the idea of for me as a member of council, and we've got to figure out if the $10,000 is going to work, so we can move forward with our user groups, so they have a level of confidence, this is my opinion, a level of confidence that they do want to participate in supporting that type of project to ensure that there's preseason ice, that we can install it with confidence and have good ice ready for them. To me, your comments about the investment on the condenser, in my mind, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If we don't pay attention to the advice given and there's a failure in the middle of the playoffs or just before the big ice show, there'll be a lot of, you talked about it, why didn't you just do it? Because you're going to do it again. You're going to do it in the next year. So that's my take on that. And as for, I see number 3 there, there's, I think, a bigger discussion than just here tonight on number 3. So to that, I'll go to Councillor Lennox. He had his hand up.
No, this is perfect. This is what I wanted to see, and I suspect a lot of the user groups and taxpayers in North Dundas would like to see, and also the prying eyes of the counties to see what we're working with here. So just under 4 million by 2029. That's a lot of road, a lot of gravel. So my first question, and it's rhetorical, don't answer this, is I want to know where the money's going to come from. Reserves, taxation, etc. Future years, are you going to do, condensers this year, then followed by the upgrades and maintenance next year? And that leads into a cost-benefit analysis, which the mayor was alluding to. We have to look into damned if we do and damned if we don't situations. If a condenser will deliver a service to our user groups at 10,000 and just give us that extra bit of time to figure out the plan, perfect. If it doesn't make sense. For question 1, I agree with the mayor. Question 2, I reflect it. And question 3, yeah, I want to see a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis, before I even touch question 3.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Uhrig.
I appreciate you trying to, piggyback all of that, Mr. CEO, with some good news. I do appreciate that. 'Cause, to be barraged and then, hey, but look at this. No, all jokes aside, I do think, I do think that this is, to Councillor Lennox's point, exactly what we as council and the community as a whole needs to see. That, the raw numbers, so to speak. In terms of number 1, I think that makes sense. We need to do something like in terms of that climate control. I was in the rink yesterday, and maybe it's not fair to, talk about what it felt like in there during this heat spell we've had, but think about that at the end of August if we have that and try to make ice. That's sort of what my, consideration, right? So I think anything we can do right now to combat is perfect. Number 2 is, nature of the beast, unfortunately, just in terms of a condenser replacement. If we roll the dice and we hit January and don't have ice, then what do we do, right? So, that makes sense to me. Number 3 is, there's more to be there. And honestly, I think it's big numbers and it's shocking numbers, and there's certainly bigger conversations to be had. And looking forward to the strategic plan we just have approved, and we'll hopefully see by the end of the year. But I just looking long term, there's other things to do. But I will say I preface saying looking long term by just noting the fact, and I just opened it up now, so I got the number right. But Russell Township, looking at building their new facility, they opened up the bids and stuff just earlier this week, and the lowest total in terms of construction was $86 million. So we're talking, let's say, 3-some million. And it's a much broader scope than what they're looking at there. I understand that what we're working with, but we're talking 3-some million. So even if you multiply that over, saying you have to do identical work at the Chesterfield facility, we're still under $8 million, roughly, right? Versus looking at $86 million for a massive recreation facility. So of course, there's long-term planning to be, discussed, and it will be discussed. But just in today's numbers, that's a wildly outrageous total to be handed. And yeah, so anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, comments? There you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. DeHaan, monthly activity summaries.
Yeah, and so this one for council, I really like, and I mean this in the most gentle way, like whatever council direction I get, or we get, that I'm quite happy with that, and it's just really putting it out there for council. One of the things, or one of my observations in my time here, each department's putting together monthly activity summaries. We had previously done that at the counties as well. Come to realize we're not sure if there was a lot of value in it. Like, and I know council appreciates this, but for those that are tuning in as a member of the public, these reports aren't just slammed together in 10 minutes. There's a lot of time and effort and a process that goes through to put it onto an agenda. And if you actually start adding up the hours of work associated with it, it's a lot of effort. And that's not to say that effort isn't worth it. I guess the question I'm putting out to council is there's information on those monthly activity summaries that's really I would consider it to be routine day-to-day activities that and there's no reason if Councillor Annabelle or Deputy Mayor Bergeron had a question about XYZ that anybody else for that matter can connect with us and we could share some of that information in terms of routine day-to-day stuff. What I see as a little bit perhaps better value for council is instead of putting the effort into monthly activity summaries is that we actually get into more meaty key information reports at a department level. So the report we just went through I would consider to be like a meaty key information report where we actually focus in on a certain topic and provide council with some detailed information. There's a lot of good statistical data that does come through on those monthly activity summaries, and I'll use building permits. Fire stats is also another interesting one. Landfill, like the volume going into the landfill. I think that I would assume council actually appreciates seeing those things and understanding kind of trends and whatnot. And to that, I would offer that, if that's the kind of thing that council really finds informative and of value in monthly activity summaries, then we look at maybe quarterly statistics from departments or something of that nature. Rather than monthly activity summaries. But all this to say, if council does find value in those and you look at them and you find that you get a lot of good information from them, that's fine. I think at a director level we've kind of chatted and said, well, let's find out from council what kind of value they see or if they would prefer us to be focusing some of that time and effort into more detailed key information reports.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Annabelle, then Councillor Lennox.
I agree. There's a lot of information that comes out in the monthly activity summaries that is very repetitive from the month before and the month before and the month before. It's just too much. If the numbers were put on a quarterly basis, I think that would give us a better picture, and that's what I would like to see.
Thank you. Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, it's if we can save you time, save your staff time, but still going back to delegated authorities, we would like to be in the know. I would take a kind of off the beaten path approach and do something a little more unique. What are top 3 complaints you're getting this month or this quarter, and focus on those. We can take Thompson Road, for example, and Mr. Cheney can address that fully in his key information report, or tonight, like what Ms. Meerberg did with what needs to be done with the rinks. I would like to top 3 complaints, challenges, and keep it simple. And whether you do it on a quarterly, monthly, whatever basis, that's your prerogative. But also utilize that website more, where we were talking about the projects and tasks and stuff, because now and then I do visit just to see what's going on and see the little updates and any comments if they are there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lennox. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, no, I mean that honestly, that was going to kind of be my my one comment to make in terms of this is, yeah, like you're right. It's quite repetitive in some cases, these things, and I mean that just seems like an less than effective use of time. So yeah, more of a quarterly review and kind of high level things, but also to Councillor Lennox's point, and I was going to make the same one, is, you know, if there's something that is of a need to know, and we want the community to know, I mean, we have that Let's Connect North Dundas, so maybe there's some things we can transfer over there, and, you know, just as a way of, you know, broadly sharing that kind of information.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, any thoughts?
Sometimes I have thoughts.
Please express.
I like to see statistics, but I guess I would be okay with a quarterly, and also with Councillor Lennox, if an issue does come up, that come as a key information, just like you did this evening. I think that was really interesting, because it's on YouTube. If any, you know, maybe 10 people watch YouTube. I don't know, out of the whole community. It's information that they can then see. That's not on Facebook.
Good. Commissioner Hunt, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move to our last presenter on key information, Mr. Cheney. The removal and replacement of sidewalks.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser, members of council. So, yeah, this is a key information just to keep council updated and the members of the public as well. So, a tender went out for the removal and replacement of sidewalks at various locations throughout the township. It was posted on the electric bidding site of Bids and Tenders, and we received 12 different bids by the May 2nd deadline. Based on a review and evaluation of all the submissions, Mighty Lawn was chosen as their bid submission met all of the requirements of the tender specs and was the lowest bid. The sidewalk work, which is based on a cost per square meter, will be done to the extent that the total budgeted amount of 2024 allows. It is foreseen that the necessary sidewalk replacement and removal can be done within the budgeted amount of $40,000. Mighty Lawn has commenced removing and replacing sidewalks complete with tactile plates where required throughout the villages of Winchester and Chesterville. It is anticipated that the work will be completed no later than August 30th of this year.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Mr. Cheney, those, and I trust I talked about it with you, the blowouts that allow the sidewalk, snow removal, the sidewalk machines. Mm-hmm. Will they be part of that process of ensuring that the sidewalk machines aren't trimming our bell poles or our hydro poles and are staying on the sidewalk?
Yeah, so we did discuss that when we met with the contractor, and we're going to make sure that we have enough room to get around the hydro poles and the bell poles so that we are not clipping them in the future.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Urick.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Forgive me for forgetting or anything like that, but I guess the sidewalks that are being done in Winchester and Chesterville were deemed to be highest priority in terms of those within the township, and there were not others in, let's say, South Mountain, Morwood, or whatever that needed.
Correct. So we do a yearly inspection, and the inspections we do are based on what the minimum maintenance standards. There is a section in there on sidewalks. So we determine every year what sidewalks we're going to replace with regards to the minimum maintenance standards. And no, in Morwood and South Mountain, it's a brand new sidewalk, so we don't have any issues with that. Inkerman, we don't have any sidewalks in there that need to be done. This year, it'll just be Winchester and Chesterville.
Perfect, thank you, Jamie.
If there's nothing else, the speed radar signs, please.
Thanks again. A request for speed radar signs was posted on our electronic bidding site, Bids and Tenders, and of the 8 quotes received by May 7th deadline, Traffic Logics was chosen as their submission, as they met all the required specs and was the lowest quote of $3,369.28 per unit, including all the mounting hardware. Now, the RFQ was for 7 speed radar signs, 4 of which stay here in North Dundas. The other 3 are going to North Stormont. The Township of North Dundas has an approved budget of $15,500 for speed signs this year, and the quote come well in underneath that at $13,477.12. All units are here. We just are getting ready to place them up, and they will be in all hamlets and villages within the Township of North Dundas.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I guess for everyone's benefit, maybe, these speed radar signs, they do capture and save information that's we're going to use to support the efforts of our local the OPP to target the times where there's that are of the greatest concern and the speeds that are recorded, right?
Correct. So they record coming and going traffic. So as you're driving towards it, you'll see your speed flashing on there. But when you're leaving town and you're going away from it, you won't see any speed, but it is recording how fast you're going. So it does give a date and a time. There's quite a bit of information that we gather from that. It'll give, what percentage of people were over the speed limit, what percentage of people were following the speed limit. So it's quite handy. One thing it doesn't tell whether it's a car or a tractor or a truck or anything along that line, and that's where we rely on the counties to give us those counters because they can track that. But yeah, it's a real good unit, and we use it quite often, and when we download information off of that, and if we see a trend or we see, there's a lot of people speeding, then we pass that on to the OPP, and so that they're aware, and then they can monitor the area a lot more than what they are.
Well, thank you for that information. If there's nothing else, thank you, Mr. Cheney.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just I know it's not on the agenda here, but I just wanted to add to Councillor Lennox's question earlier to Mr. Chalifo that was on here with Explore. With regards to the other end of the township, the northwestern end, it is having high speed put in, but it's being put in by Bell. So Mr. Chalifo works for Explore, which is kind of 80% of the township, and the other 20% is being done by Bell.
All right, so what I'm hearing is carrier pigeons on the west end.
But to Mr. Chalifo's comments about the mapping and those hexagons that weren't lime green, I do recall when I was on the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, and EOR and Eastern Ontario Regional Network would come in and make presentations. They were also a C with the information. They said, this is the best we have. And it was almost anecdotal information they were getting, so you could take it for what it was worth, but to see the actual physical activity going on, that establishes that something is happening. Before we move and I read the resolution for the consent agenda, there's been some correspondence regarding the wetland mapping, and wetland mapping is being undertaken by the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority and the South Nation Conservation Authority. And so it's important that we get an understanding as residents of North Dundas. And so I'm asking Mr. Paul to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. Excuse me. So I went to a session in Perth on the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority last Friday, 2 Fridays ago now. They did a great presentation of what's coming, and then it rolled out the following week from South Nation and Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. They're working together on the wetlands mapping. One of the key changes that's come about in the last few months, basically from the province of Ontario, formerly we only mapped the provincially significant wetlands. So we have 2 major wetlands in this municipality. They're very, very significant. The Morwood one, just southeast of Morwood. It's quite a large one, and there's also the Winchester Bog, which is to the west here, which used to be the old bombing range during the Second World War. They used it for practice and things like that, which is also a very significant wetland. So those 2 were the only regulated ones, and setbacks from those 2 was 120 meters. So no activities within 120 meters or very limited under the zoning was allowed. Now the province has brought in locally significant wetlands. We did have mapping of that. Part of our old landfill, or our current landfill site was on an old locally significant wetland. You could do whatever you wanted on a locally significant wetland. They were not regulated. This council, years ago, decided, no, we're not going to regulate those at this time. So there's no permitting or anything. Now the province has taken upon themselves to allow the conservation authorities to regulate locally significant wetlands. So the two conservation authorities scrambled since then and have put together some mapping that's now been made available in the last week and a half. I strongly suggest everyone that owns land in this municipality check the mapping. It covers hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, or thousands of acres of land. There is errors in there, and that came out at our session in Perth. They do know that. Some woodlands have been included that aren't wetlands. Yeah, you can get rain that comes through and goes through to the soil. But there are errors in there, and they should be looked at by everyone to know, yes or no, my land is a locally significant wetland or not. I did, our junior planner did a comparison between the provincial data that we have, the conservation authorities data that they put together, and put together differences. She's got some maps she's done with the highlight pen back and forth to show what are what. We're meeting with South Nation on Monday to give you the example, because our landfill site isn't a wetland. It's all designated as a wetland. We're going to need a permit anytime we do anything with that land and any fill. Well, that's got to get corrected. We have a license that just got expanded. That area's been looked at to death. So that kind of stuff has to be corrected in the mapping. The site across the road where we have our snow storage and things like that, that site is now a wetland, whereas it used to be only to the east, and that area is not showing up. So we want to get some clarification from South Nation as why are these included, what's excluded, why is it there, why is it not there? But it is going to the directors of South Nation next month, I believe it's the 17th or 18th, for approval. So once it gets approved, you'll need a permit. Anything within these locally significant wetlands, if you're doing anything in those, you need a permit. And also within 30 meters of those wetlands. So the rules change. If you can turn maybe to page 138, just roll back again, Natalie. 138, just the very bottom there. So that line there is the most significant change that you're seeing is the rules and regulations. Now all wetlands are being mapped. And basically what's going to happen is you may have a lot where you have a locally significant wetland you got several years ago. You may or may not be able to build on it. You may not be able to get a permit to build on it. So that's some of the discussions we want to have. Rideau Valley's looked at that. They will allow a permit on certain circumstances. We dealt with this with MDS years ago, but we do allow development, even though MDS may not be able to be met. That's the minimum distance separation between a barn and a new lot and someone trying to put a house on it. In this particular case, we got to determine what is South Nation looking at for that particular cases where people have a lot. I did have a developer call me. His son owns a lot that's now showing up on the wetlands layer, and he's paranoid that they've bought this lot and want to build on it, and now they can't. So there's a lot of concern out there in the community that's starting to surface once they realize what's happening with these wetlands. They are important functions. They do serve an important function in our municipality, but we want to make sure the data is accurate and the lots that do get designated are accurate and that there is something there that should be protected or, you know, work around or work beside it to preserve it. So that's where we're coming. I just want to make sure council's aware of it. The session, open session from South Nation is next week on the 27th from 3 till 8 p.m. I think it's very important to get word out. We did do a Facebook post yesterday to get word out in the local community. Take a look at these maps, see your property, get the farm community out to look at the maps, make sure it's accurate, because I looked at them quickly and I can see some that I know there's a wetland there and it's not showing up, and other places there's no wetland and it's showing up as a wetland. So there is errors in there, they got to be corrected, I guess is the message, and we've got to make sure it's done accurately before it gets adopted, because once it's adopted, it's always harder to change things after the fact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's all I can say is that this is
It came out a week ago, so.
pretty big news. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Pohl, I just have one question. So finally, after many years, our landfill was approved for expansion, and now, boom, it's called wetland. So what do you think, what's going to happen?
We'd have to get a permit from South Nation to do anything, any activities in there.
Okay.
Any placement of fill, which is garbage.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Did you have something, Councilor Lennox?
Sure, I got something. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How are you going to ensure the accuracy, as you mentioned earlier, of the lots and maps and stuff, boots on the ground? Or are you going to place this as an ignorance of being a lot owner or homeowner within the general area? Where does the onus fall?
I'll take that question back to them, because they're the governors of the data. We do have provincial data it's quite dated, albeit, and you have to understand wetlands are dynamic. They do move over time. Sometimes they can shift depending on sediment and other things that can cause a wetland or drainage, change in drainage patterns that happen. You do have some farm communities, areas where they put or drainage tile in. It could be a locally significant wetland that's no longer wet. You get the drainage tile there. So yeah, how do we get that accurate data? Unless you send a biologist to every single site. Yeah, we have to rely a little bit on the public too to come forward and say, yes, this is a wetland. No, that's not a wetland.
So pretty
Help us.
much,
My basement.
so pretty much, if you have any skin in the game, review the maps, get to the meeting next week.
Exactly. Cool.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Mr. Paul, has like the DFA or the OFA, are they involved in this?
They are a part of South Nation, so I'm not sure if South Nation's reached out to them or
Yeah,
not.
but I thought they reduced the sizes of,
Yeah.
or reduced either the forest part of that or the ag part of that committee, because now it's
Yeah. I'm not sure.
it's changed recently, the committee.
So your weekend conversations, you meet with people?
No, this is yeah, it's important that it gets out there, and I guess maybe we need to promote this on our website. Maybe some of the ag people present tonight, make sure that gets out there to the people they visit with, because yeah, it can cause you great concern if you go to do something and all of a sudden find out that you have challenges that you never expected. Okay, so thank you very much for that. There's nothing else pertaining to that. Moved by Councillor Annable, second by Councillor Lennox, that all items listed under the consent agenda be received and filed for information purposes. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Going to move into boards and committees. County Council, Deputy Mayor.
I'll make a short summary of our meeting on Monday. We had a delegation with an update on the community housing plan. The housing on Albert Street here in 2032 will be expanded at a price tag of $17 million. And so I asked, do you mean it's $17 million today, or you don't know what it's going to be in the future? But they assured me that that's the price tag they figure it will cost in the future. The increment bridge inspection was very recent, and it confirms that it's still stable. So the replacement will occur in 2025. It's good for another year. The official plan amendment number 24, which we discussed at the last meeting, where we set the date of 2006 for severances, SDG would like the date to be moved to 2024, and I said, well, we in North Dundas want it to be at 2006, so does this mean that you override our decision? And they said no, that they will have each municipality at what date that they have put. There was a very long report on the speed limit review of all the roads. They're considering a lowering, like where we have 80 kilometers going into the villages, the hamlets, down to 50. They're going to put a one in between, so to try and slow down traffic. And that's all I can remember. That's important. What about you, Mr. Mayor?
Nope, that sounds pretty good. The Garden Party Market, they had the second Garden Party Market recently, and a success. Dairy Fest, Deputy Mayor.
Thing.
Art in the Waterfront, Councillor Annabelle, any recap?
I was at a meeting last night. They discussed their open house on Art in the Waterfront that Saturday. They had 8-10 wagon rides with a dozen people on each wagon. They were quite pleased.
That'd be the CDHS. Yeah. Downtown Committee, Councillor Annabelle or Councillor Urick?
Well, we successfully had bike night last week, despite having to slow it down an hour earlier than planned because the skies did open up. However, unlike last year when the schedule didn't allow until September, it was nice to have the turnout that we did. I don't have official numbers yet, but it was nice to see the downtown full as it was, and lots of food vendors available and everything like that. And also if anybody may have noticed, the new flags, Canada flags, are up on the poles throughout the downtown core, and they look wonderful and should have a longer lifespan than the previous brackets did.
Thank you. I trust there's nothing about the carnival, but I'll go to the Green Action Gang. Councillor Lennox.
The Green Action Gang is doing well. As you can tell from OPP report, mischief is down, so the Green Action Gang is keeping all those flowers in bloom. I'll move right into Morwood RA. Next week's Meet Me on Main Street in Morwood. Myself and a few others have volunteered to go in the dunk tank and to raise funds for the Morwood RA, who committed $10,000 to the building of the Dundas Manor. So please come out, support it next Wednesday.
Yes, the season has started for the Meet Me on Mains, and I look forward to that. There's no notices of motions? No petitions. So I have a new segment in here. Municipal news. A lot of things happening in North Dundas. This Saturday is Household Hazardous Waste Day at the Boyne Road landfill between 8 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. And this Saturday, if you're looking for something fun to do, the North Dundas is hosting the Mayor's Disc Golf Challenge at the Rick Covey Memorial Park in South Mountain on Saturday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. There will be a free barbecue, activities for the whole family. Come out and cheer me on as I compete against the mayors of SDG in the city of Cornwall in disc golf. I'm not sure if anyone's played disc golf, but here's your opportunity to see the demonstration of how it works in South Mountain at the Rick Covey Memorial Park. And finally, Canada Day in North Dundas will be celebrating it at the North Dundas District High School from 9:30 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. For this event, there will be no parking on County Road 43, but there is plenty of parking at the high school, and our firefighters will be there to direct traffic. So, staff recognition. Recently, Tanya Swartz and Matt Tebow attended and successfully completed the Good Roads TJ Mahoney Construction and Maintenance course. I'm always quite energized to announce the success of staff members when they take on a challenge and learn and upgrade their skills, which provide the good roads and benefits to all of us in the community. So my thanks to Tanya and Matt for doing that. Also, was it yesterday that we're in Chesterville together? Yep. So yesterday we were in Chesterville together, all five of us, at the Video Game Mansion, a storefront in Chesterville on Main Street across from the gas station at the intersection. And we were all quite happy and pleased to be there and to see, as I was saying yesterday, another storefront filled in Chesterville, and it truly is a benefit. And I thank I believe it's Matt and Brendan for taking that challenge on. And the day while we were there yesterday, there was quite a few people in and out taking a look at the wares provided for sale. So all the best to them, and I appreciate their efforts. And if there's nothing else, we're going to go to this section, moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annabelle. Pardon? I guess so, yeah. Sure. Comment from Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, so, the rec department has been awfully busy over the past few days dealing with the heat wave and opening up pools and everything else. I believe you're forging some kind of relationship or partnership with our community members to do something with this very ugly baseball shed or whatever it is with graffiti on it. Is my mic on? Cool. Did you want to talk about that?
So we are investigating the structural integrity of that shed. We're trying to determine whether it's worth residing the shed and removing the addition on the side. So we are investigating that versus investigating something else, removing the shed and replacing it with something else. But either way, by the end of the season, it will be relocated if we are keeping it. And we have had a very generous offer from a local gentleman to help us move that if need be.
All right, perfect. And if you need help testing the integrity, I will gladly lend a sledgehammer. But yeah, it's I would like to see it moved or at least the graffiti taken care of by end of season. Thank you.
And Councillor Lennox, I thought you were also going to talk about the cooling centers and the pools.
Yeah, so the pools, yesterday Winchester Pool was definitely packed at 3:30. I went to the cooling center, but the door was locked. So I won't touch that one. And that was at 3:30. I believe the timing was till 4. And both doors to Joel Steel. But not going to touch that today. The doors were open. I did my due diligence, and
Maybe they saw you. Maybe they saw you coming.
Yeah, they got to keep the hotness out, right?
But I do want to offer thanks and appreciation to staff and the volunteers that supported the cooling centers and the pools. Record numbers were reported both days. Never had seen so many people utilizing the pools. And but this is something that other areas have done. And as the climate changes, I think it's going to become standard. And I know there's conversation with the chief about making sure that there's the 72-hour thing that we advocate in the fire service, preparedness kit, something similar to that for these cooling centers to have at the ready. So whenever we do open them up, we're able to offer the things that are needed at these cooling centers. So it's going to be another challenge for us as we move forward, as we do experience this climate changing on us. So thank you for reminding me about the council comments. So is there anything else? Moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annable, that bylaw number 2024-43 to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 20th day of June. All those in favor? Opposed? See none. That's carried. Moved by Councillor Annable, seconded by Councillor Lennox, that council adjourn at 6:51 to the call of the chair. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience.